Welcome into 11 Personnel. Nick Roush and Adam Luckett joining you here on a Monday where typically we're talking with the KSR football podcast crew, but half that crew is somewhere in Iowa, Luckett. They're hanging out with Kirk Ferentz. They're watching field goals in the snow. And frankly, I'm a little jealous of them because that was an electric football game on Black Friday. I'd love to spend more time talking about that Scott Frost, Matt Rule meltdown, whatever you want to call it. Insert coach here. There's going to be a meltdown in Nebraska. But we got other things to talk about. There's a lot happening. There's a lot going on that we must discuss.
There's something going on today. Did I miss something? There's stuff going on. Could have fooled me.
I really did want to talk more about that Iowa game because we had plenty of good laughs about it in the press box on Saturday before we had to laugh at the Kentucky Wildcats' pathetic performance against the Louisville Cardinals. But 5 first downs and you score 13 points and you win the football game. Like that's hard to do. So hats off to you, Iowa. Just Iowa football is still Iowa football no matter what. Nope.
Iowa's not Kentucky. And
No.
Kentucky's in a world of they're just in a world of confusion, bewilderment. A world of what happens next. My favorite part about all this stuff, Nick, is really nobody knows how to act. Like no one knows like what's real, what's not.
Yeah.
What do we get mad at? What do we get happy with? What do we take that is concrete? And so we're trying to parse through all this information in real time. And some of it is smoke, but some of it is real. There's curveballs all the time. Like we got hit with one today from both of the Florida State news we'll talk about. They were both came from under the radar. And so we're going to discuss all of that. And really in the last 18 hours, maybe 22, Tucker Caddis was maybe around this time. So maybe 24. There's a long list of things that have happened that we've got to talk about here, but this is only the beginning. It's only going to get crazier from here.
That's a good reminder. And we're getting a lot of questions at KS Board, like, could this happen? Could that happen? Blah, blah, blah. The answer to all those questions is yes. Anything could happen this offseason. Everything is on the table. It's the silly season of all. So if you want to make sure you're up to date with all of it, make sure you're over on KS Board. Join today. Silly season sales, only $1 to join to give it a try now. So go ahead, give us a try. Make sure you're in the loop because I guess we'll just start with the Vince Marrow stuff on Sunday night. There's a lot to parse through. I actually have bullet points and topics to get to instead of more free-flowing conversation. So we'll get to it all right here on 11 Personnel presented by Monticello Bank. And yes, let's start with Vince where the Vince Marrow to Louisville smoke did not materialize out of nowhere. It's one of those things like it that when I heard it, you don't just take something and run with it right away. You run it by people who might know, and then you run it by others who might not know either. Or you're trying to like filter it all out. And when I initially heard, it's like, okay, all right, he did this. This happened before. Jeff tried to get him a couple years back. The price wasn't right. He didn't make the move. Maybe the price doesn't matter as much now. So let's see where this goes. And ultimately, after hearing from multiple people on Sunday, I put it on KS Board, and that stirred things up quite a bit. But I think I don't know what the reception was initially. Like it's like there was a lot of like, I can't believe this. But for me, it always felt like the best out for him, unless he wanted to go be a MAC head coach. But a lot of people like it were pointing to salaries, and I don't think anybody is leaving this coaching staff and getting paid more money. Like if you're leaving, it's for less money, but this isn't a 1-year thing. This is a 5-10 year thing. And for some people who are younger, who have a long career ahead of them, it's best to get out and make sure you don't slip down that ladder like you referred to last week. But then for Vince's 5-10 year thing too, like, he's the king of Lexington. Does he want to betray that and become a villain in this state? Like, I think that played a big role too. But ultimately, this was not something that festered for long. Matt reported at 9:30 this morning. I don't know. I guess that's about 12 hours later that Vince was in fact not leaving. He was staying at Kentucky, and then Vince went on to KSR, which we'll talk about more later. But like, just your initial thoughts on when all that dropped and as things were unfolding, what was going through your head?
My thoughts were what I told you Saturday. That's not happening. But I just don't see him leaving for Louisville. When push comes to shove,
Mm-hmm.
I just could not see him bringing the pen out and signing the paper. But
Yeah,
it's a sign that he is looking to leave. It's yet another sign that someone else is looking to leave. We've had the Brad White scuttlebutt. Matt kind of backed that up. I believe that was Saturday night when he dropped some scoop on the site. There is, if you're not, go silly season sale, KSR Plus. Check us out right now. Bunch of people are joining. It's pretty crazy over there, so definitely need to check that out. But I think there's a lot of signs of like the ship is sinking. I need to find a landing spot. Now the question you have to ask is the head coach doing that too? Or is it just his top assistants? Right?
yeah. Because that was the implication. Like, a lot of people, I think, natural line of thinking was, if Vince is gone, well, then Mark's not going to be here, right? Like, that was the next step. And for some people, they were like, okay, yeah, please sign me up. But to your original point, Luckett, I had a similar thought with Cal at Arkansas. I was like, like, it makes logical sense, but he's not actually going to do it, right? And then he did, which is why that was part of like where you couldn't just let it sit out there and not say anything about it. But it did quickly go away, but I don't think it's all the way gone away. Like, just coming out and saying I'm not doing it, not gone away, and then I was surprised that he joined Matt on the radio show this morning, and even though he said he's not going anywhere, initial feedback is that the message was not very well received. I think that's safe to say, Mr. Luckett.
Yeah, I think just how the delivery of that question or the answer of that question was maybe not.
Yep. Yes.
He was direct. He was
I'm not going to
indirect to a
comment.
direct. Well, not only that, I think, will you be in Lexington? Yes, next year. It was an indirect, direct answer. Like,
Yes, it
paused,
was
thought about it.
Yes. Yeah.
So but it was something you had to listen to. If you would have just read a transcript. So all of that and all this is movement. We don't know what's going on. We're trying to figure out what's real and what's not right now. But that was, I think, the big one. Because if Marrow left to any job, right? Like if Tim Albin is Ohio head coach, he's in the mix for Charlotte. He's probably not going to get it. It's kind of sounding like they're going to hire Bobby Petrino, which is great for content.
But like, why, Bobby? Like,
Yeah, that's like we could talk about that on another podcast. But yeah, that's a whole conversation for another day. But like, if he just went to Ohio, how do you replace him? He is the voice of the program in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Duke era. How do you replace that if he's gone? What's going on with Brad White? I have a feeling a lot of this movement, Nick, and if they were going to make staff changes, like, it's all going to happen after Wednesday. And so we're kind of waiting for that. But it definitely seems like some wheels are in motion over there. and they're saying we're gonna, we've got the solutions to fix the problems, but there's definitely a feel of, well, hey, seems like people are trying to leave. What's going on here?
Yeah. And you mentioned Marrow as sort of the spokesperson, the mouthpiece for the program. It's not just that. He's been here the whole time. He's the most popular Kentucky assistant football coach ever. Like, there's no the only other coach in my lifetime that you could have that had such widespread name recognition was Joker Phillips, and that's because his name was Joker, right? Like, he played at Kentucky, he was a lead recruiter, and then he got the offense rolling. That popularity dwindled quite rapidly once he became the head coach, but like, there's not another comp for Vince Marrow, because he is such a one of one in this profession. Like, he gets paid like a coordinator, and he doesn't call plays, but he's also he's a spokesperson. He helps with the fundraising stuff. Hell, he's recruiting for other sports, right? Like, he's got the donors in line. He's got the admin. Like, he does a lot over there. And then from the player's perspective, I think the sign for me in all of this that worries me the most is just like the discipline issues that we kind of refer to loosely. Like, some of it's just players not showing up for practice or leaving practice, or just all of the stuff, just the garbage that's kind of gone on over there. When things go bad, they go to him. He's the intermediary, right? And for him to kind of just be fed up with it all, like that's the sign that just it really worries me, and has the question that, like, I assume he's asking the question that we're all asking. Am I really going to go do this again for another year? you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a big thing. It's like, again, they've got a feel of a sinking ship. Like I've talked about on this podcast, when you have a season like Kentucky had, no matter what you think the future is, people aren't just going to want to say, you know what, let's run this back. Like, we can fix this.
Yeah.
Let's the same cast of characters. Like, we can fix this. Everybody, just let's run it back. That's just not typically how it works, especially when you involve that many people. So there's going to be some moving and shaking. It's just, where does it come from? And again, I think most people, if you asked them, the two most important assistants on Kentucky staff, I think it's pretty clear that large majority, Marrow, Brad White, and that both of those guys are, at least, looking around, at least I think we can say fairly right now, that's concerning. And we haven't heard Vince, or we haven't heard it reported, at least, that he's 100%. Oh, right? Like,
It was a little like he came on to try to put those to bed, and that did not get accomplished.
yeah, and I think, you lose Marquise Davis and Tucker Caddis, two guys that had shown no signs of wavering, two guys that have been locked in with you for a long time. And just like that, snap of the finger, they're gone.
Davis, your highest ranked player, an immediate impact guy who could, hell, he could be a 1,000-yard rusher next year. And he flips 3 days before signing day. And the Caddis one is almost as alarming, because we spent all season saying we got to
His
fix
two
the
brothers
offensive
are on the
line.
team.
Yeah, and you need offensive linemen to build on, and it's a long-term fix. He's a guy you can build on as a long-term fix.
Yeah, it's just, they don't lose Ohio kids like this
No,
late.
never.
If they do, it's like Ohio State makes a late push. I think it's very similar to the 2015 recruiting cycle. When you go, and I wrote this today at KSR Plus, that class, Nick, had the Dow twins from St. Edward.
Mm-hmm.
It had Devon Hamilton, who's still playing in the NFL. It had and it had a few other commits, but those were like the three big ones post the year, and that's back when they had the February day. But like that year, that's when they lost 5 or 6 games in a row at the end of 2014. They were 5-7. They were kind of reeling a little bit. Now they end up recovering, but they lost really good players. Like both those, one of those Dows was an all Big Ten type player, and Hamilton was a stud for Ohio State at defensive tackle. Like they ended up kind of surviving, but those were big losses. And this feels like that. We'll see with Tucker Caddis what he ends up becoming, but Marquise Davis feels like a legitimate player.
Yeah.
And he's going in your conference to play for Missouri, of all places. Missouri getting a stud tailback out of Cleveland, Ohio. And he's probably going to be pretty good for them. That's a tough pill to swallow. And I think it's a development. I think if Kentucky's house was in order, I don't know if that happens. Now, it's kind of hard to sell this offense right now. But I think if their house was in order, they would have prevented that from happening. But I think they probably got so much going on with figuring out what they want to do, who they want to, like, for a lack of a better word, release, and what positions they want to address in the portal. In, do they want to have a huge portal class or do they not? I hear some of Vince's comments and I'm like, it doesn't necessarily sound like they're all in on doing the big portal thing. But then again, they you kind of look at it and they kind of have to. But then again, the math is the math. You're going to have to cut a lot of players. There's just a lot going on.
And we'll get to that in just a moment because I have a lot of thoughts on the portal talk and the portal messaging. But we are just 2 days away from signing day. I need to start working on the preparation for that. But Vince said they do expect to add some more people to this high school class before Wednesday. And Luckett has at least one player on Flip Watch if you want to check that out over in the KSR Plus football recruiting notebook. But we need to tell you about our friends at Monticello Bank, proud presenting sponsors of 11 Personnel. And they've been putting people first for 128 years. That's right. Banking locally, putting the people of Kentucky first, because Monticello Bank, they're looking out for you. They're going to put the best rates on your side to get the numbers in your favor to hook you up. And I know you're probably getting your financial affairs in order at the end of the year, maybe doing a little financial planning. Go shop around at Monticello Bank because they got some great rates there. You're always going to get the best rates when you bank local, whether you're looking for a house, car, or looking for any sort of long-term savings plan. Consider Monticello Bank. Visit them online at nbcbank.com. You can also visit them Visit them in person with 21 branches and 14 different counties. The flagship's right over there on North Hurstbourne Lane. I was driving by there en route to the PGA Championship this summer. Very convenient location. You're out and about shopping and stuff. Shop on in this holiday season. They'll treat you right at Monticello Bank. The messaging, Luckett, it's been a little weird when it comes to this portal stuff because we know they had their big personnel meeting. They worked hard yesterday. They were there all day. We gotta figure it all out. There's two parts to this, and one of them is just a logical fallacy that it infuriates me. So I'll start with that, and then I'll go to the comps that they're throwing out too. That also just don't add up for me as well. Okay. One of them is we're bad because we did a bad job in the portal. We got bad apples. There's our problem. How do we fix it? We go to the portal. It's like, well, it's like, oh man, I've got a cocaine problem. Maybe I should do cocaine out of my left nostril instead of my right nostril. Like, I'm eating too much. Let me start eating something different. Like, I don't know. I've got to. No, my favorite is the I've got a drinking problem, so I'm just going to switch to beer. That's like something that real people do. And you know what? It might work for some of them. I don't know how it's going to work here. Like they're basically saying we're just doing more homework this year on our portal guys. And it's like, is anybody going to trust them? And that's my thing. Look, it is we can't sit here like we're going to report on it. We're going to tell you what we think of these guys. But at the end of the day, I don't think there's one person watching this right now that even if they get a big portal class is going to believe that these players are worth a damn. Right? Like I wouldn't blame them. So finding optimism in all of this, like you got people are clamoring for Brock Vandagriff. They get him, he just gets wrecked at Kentucky. Then you know, like, oh, Chip Trainum, here's this guy. Well, he never plays. Oh, we got this offensive tackle from Tennessee. He's getting a pretzel at halftime. You know what? Like it, I don't blame him. We've gone down and gotten some snacks from the concession stands every once in a while. Had to go look for coffee, but never as players. We're in the media for crying out loud. So that's one logical fallacy. The other part of this that I don't comparing their situations to situations at South Carolina or Vanderbilt. It's completely different. It just is, and it also doesn't help things when you're comparing them to teams that Kentucky fans think they're better than. Yeah, South Carolina was bad, but you know what? There was a lot more belief behind Lenore Sellers, and you know what? They had some holes to fill, yes, but you know what? That big Dylan Stewart, he was a freshman coming in. They didn't have to find him from the portal; they recruited him from the high school ranks, and then they paid for Rocket Sanders, and they kept their offensive line healthy. Like, oh, Diego Pavia, dude, they got a completely brand new team from New Mexico State and a whole new offensive operation. Like, you're not doing that this year. So all of the comps, I feel like they're making matters even worse. They're not. All they're doing is making me think that this is such a foolish decision.
Yeah, I think on the trust level that, hey, we've missed on evals, but our evals will be good this year. Like, there's no winning that PR battle for them. Like, to me, there's no even, like, for them to even try. There's just not winning it, you know.
Yeah.
You're just going to have to go out and prove it. Like, that we evaluated better. We found better fits. You're just going to have to go out and prove that. That's not going to be solved until the games start. So, you know, from that aspect, there's not much they can do, you know. Like, it is what it is. That the criticism is earned, and to defeat it, you're going to have to prove people wrong. And we'll see if you can do that. So there's not much they can say, if they want to try to say or give reasoning. I think if they gave more details on their evaluation process, Nick, there was some more transparency, I think that would be a start.
Oh yeah, but we don't.
But let's be honest, that's not going to happen. And so it is what it is. Moving on to the comparison, the South Carolina and Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt had just totally gutted their team from I think Clark Lee maybe termed it energy vampires. I think there's of that where they just totally flipped the roster, but they implanted an offense essentially. They brought a quarterback, an offensive coordinator, and head coach in to run an offense. It's a little different. And they knew what they were getting in Diego Pavia. Like, because the coaches have worked with him. That's going to be different here. So that's not necessarily – none of your scheme stuff is changing for Kentucky. And you're going to be bringing in guys that you've probably – your coaches haven't worked with. So there's going to be a little bit unknown. So that's different. South Carolina, they've had young players step into premium positions and hold down the fort. Lanella Sellers at quarterback, Dylan Stewart at edge. They had they've got a secondary full of homegrown recruits that end up being one of the best secondaries in college football this season. They've got a true freshman 5-star starting at left tackle. Like, who are the transfers on South Carolina? The transfers are Rocket Sanders and Kyle Kennard. They had 2 big hits in the transfer portal. Everything else, when you kind of dig in their team, is guys that have been on the roster for multiple years.
And who on this roster are you building around that like you can confidently say, yeah, like all of them have like, well, we kind of like this guy, but are they ready to become those players next year?
And again, I keep going back to Eli Cox's statement. This is a guy who's seen the highs and now the lows. It was basically like, this is not a quick fix. It's a multi-layered issue that's probably going to take a couple seasons to fix. So, and I've kind of looked from my outsider's point of view, I thought the same thing. We've talked about that on this show throughout the year. So, with all that said, what's the goal for this year? Is it just to get a bunch of transfers and go 6-6 and then do it all over again? Like, how do you get out of this rut? To me, you get out of it like South Carolina did. You have young players at key positions step up and become the rock solid foundation of your program and become draft picks and become good all SEC caliber players. So where is that for Kentucky? It's hard to see it right now on the roster.
Yeah.
And to me, like, how do you fix the offensive line? Nick, I don't know what they're going to do, but my hunch is they're probably going to bring in 4 portal guys, and they're going to have 4 portal offensive line starters next year. And they're going to say this is how we fixed it. And then they're going to go out and they're going to probably struggle. The only way to fix it really is to develop these young guys you got. So how do you get to that point where your young guys can start taking control of that position? I think you're probably at least a year away from that. And then defensively, you just got a lot to replace. I think defense, it's going to be a little bit easier for them because it's just, you don't have to, like, I think there's so many things they got to meld together on offense and find an identity, or at least defensively, they have an identity and a structure of what they want to do. I think there's probably more younger guys that they could depend on. There's a proven track record of being able to get guys ready. They're actually, I think, developing players and getting players drafted. There is a track record for that. So I think they'll probably fix it. When you talk about fixing things, it's probably easier to fix on defense. Offensively, it's just hard to see.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, where are we? You bring everyone back, you go 5-7, 6-6 again. What's the conversation we're having next year? And that's why I said, like, with the Stoops thing, are you in for 5? Or are you in for a walk-off?
And
Kentucky needs someone in for 5 right now. They don't need a walk-off. They need a long-term plan here to move forward. And I think part of the long-term plan would be like, all right, this season is gonna be a tough one. So we can set and establish a clear foundation to build off of. And it's not, the only way that really hits is they would have to hit like a grand slam in the portal. And based off previous results, that's an unreasonable think they're going to do that. And so this is where we are.
Yeah, and I think part of you could do it. You just get the powertrain from some other offense. GJ Kinney it or something. You're like, all right, we're gonna run this style. We're gonna get this quarterback with his play caller, and we're gonna move on. That maybe that could provide some sort of quick fix for a year, but that's expensive. And when you talk about the 3 or 4 year thing versus the 1 year thing, if you what's the difference between 44 million and 35 or whatever? Like,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, we
it's
do the same thing next year.
Like,
how long does Stoops want to keep doing this? All of that.
Yeah.
Now I will admit, like, because of the transfer portal, you can definitely, like, there's a level of there's no like stacking years together. You've got 1 year teams, and it's kind of who replicates that the best. So there is that. I just think, and you hear Kentucky talk, line of scrimmage program, want to get back to bullying people, mean, nasty, kicking ass at the line of scrimmage. Being the team, teams don't want to play because it's a fist fight. It all starts on the line. I don't see how you can build something like that out of the portal. So you either got to say, we're getting young and we're developing these guys. We're going to play that way and we're going to take our lumps, I think. Or you've got to, I think, adjust your identity from like being a line of scrimmage program to being something else where you're not super dependent on that, while building some type of player leadership within your org, because that's obviously been a huge issue. And everyone's talking about now, but that was the conversation we were having until they beat Louisville last year.
Mm-hmm.
That was the conversation. And they beat Louisville last year, and it kind of got just, I'm not going to say it got swept under the rug, but it got buried.
Yeah. It became less of a big deal.
Right.
We're not the most optimistic right now, if you couldn't tell. Things, but like it's only day 2 of the offseason, of silly season. There's a lot that's going to happen between now and then. The coaching carousel has only begun to turn. So let's kind of shift our focus to that portion of this, because we had coaches fired yesterday. Ryan Walters at Purdue. If you listen to 11 Personnel, you would have heard me from the NFL Combine tell you that Ryan Walters was going to be a failure at Purdue. And what do you know? Didn't work out for Mr. Walters there. But it's funny. The guy who ended up calling plays in offense, he'll probably end up being a defensive coordinator hire in this cycle at a pretty big time job. Neil Brown, he's out. I guess Gus Malzahn resigning and going to be the offensive coordinator at Florida State. That happened surprisingly on Saturday. I don't think people were too surprised by Neil Brown. Like, that was a little bit tenuous, and he won his way off the hot seat a year ago. But then they struggled this year, and they had another change of leadership. So, kind of stinks for the former Cat. That feels like a QC role could maybe be in the works at UK. Like, it wouldn't surprise me. Although I think it would be weird if you're Bush Hamden and you've got 2 former Stoops offensive coordinators working in the building. It would be odd. But I did want to at least mention that.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about this. This is a, an all-in season for Kentucky. I think you could make the case Mark Stoops is kind of putting his legacy in the hands of Bush Hamden and what he can do from building this roster and then building a plan and an attack on Saturday to go out and score points. I think there may be a case where Mark Stoops maybe wants some insurance in case stuff goes wrong next year. So does that mean, do you want to go out and hire an experienced QC if you're rebuilding the support staff, which we've kind of heard that might be the case? You might see them beef up or at least reorganize things. Mm-hmm. So would you bring an experienced QC in? And maybe it's not to just to have that. Maybe it's just to have another brain in the room, another set of eyes, another guy to help them figure something out, a productive way to move the football and score points. That's just it's just a thought, because
something.
I think once this season starts and stuff goes bad, I think anything's on the table. I think we could see an in-season firing, not from Stoops, but maybe he moves on quicker from someone else. Because if it gets closer to a hot seat season, that's what you see. Like Neil Brown fired as defensive coordinator this year when things were bad. Mm-hmm. Right? You see that more when the pressure starts to ramp up.
Right.
So that's just something just to take into consideration. Like, for example, Nebraska. Things did not go well with Marcus Satterfield calling plays in year one.
Hmm.
He coached quarterbacks. Matt Rule said, "You're not coaching quarterbacks anymore. You're going to be kind of oversee the whole offense, and we're going to bring a guy with NFL experience to coach the quarterbacks." And then when things didn't go well, he said he had the replacement option built in with being able to go get Hogerson. I wouldn't be surprised if you see something, I don't know, that could be similar to that. That's all I'm saying. I'm just talking out loud, but that's something
Mm-hmm.
that I think
You're
makes some sense.
yeah. You're observing elsewhere, and this is a move that coaches do. That would not be surprising. I do think we were surprised today when we saw that Florida State is hiring a Coach White to be their defensive coordinator, just not Brad White. He was long considered to be one of the leading candidates for the job. Instead, Mike Norvell called up Tony White, the Nebraska defensive coordinator, the play caller of the Black Shirts, to be the Seminoles' next defensive play caller. That was a surprise. That was a surprise. And I don't think it necessarily means that Brad's here to stay, but that was I don't want to. It wasn't the quietest secret, but like a lot of people in the industry who are in the agent circles who are swimming in those coaching carousel waters, they believe that Brad was the most likely choice of the pool for Mike Norvell, who ultimately decided to go elsewhere and hire the Nebraska defense coordinator.
And Tony White is bringing Nebraska defensive line coach Terrence Knighton, I believe his name is, with him. So that could have been a thing where Amar Stewart might have gone with Brad White. I think Knighton's pretty respected in the recruiting space, so that might have been maybe that was got them. They got that over the hump.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to keep in mind. They might have lost both if Florida State would have been there. But yeah, again, there's jobs opening now. Like App State just opened right before we got on here. One thing no one's talking about, the Ohio State domino will be a big one. If Ryan Day decides to move on, that will be a big one. That will remember the domino, the basketball at Cal?
Yeah.
Cal going to Arkansas opened up all those jobs. This would be, I would think, would play out a little bit similar. Now, nothing for that is going to happen until after the playoff. So we'll have to get through the playoff to see how that plays out. But that's another thing to watch out for. There could be a lot of movement later. But that gets us to our biggest, I think, topic, which is John Sumrall and what's going on with him.
Well, let's talk about it. But first, I want to tell you about Club Blue NIL. It's the official collective partner of the University of Kentucky. It was founded by UK fans strictly to support the NIL efforts at the University of Kentucky. And unlike most collectives, 100% of subscriber money, 100% of donor money, it goes directly to NIL efforts. They don't charge any fees. And Club Blue subscribers, they receive some awesome benefits. You're probably invited to go to the preseason scrimmage with the Cats. You get some nice merch, meet and greets with the players, all sorts of great stuff. So pick what sport you want to support when you visit clubbluenil.com and join Club Blue today. Shout out Club Blue NIL, supporting student athletes at the University of Kentucky. The American Conference Championship game is Friday. We have Army playing the Tulane Green Wave, and John Sumrall will be coaching that game. I don't know if he's going to be with the Green Wave after that. It's pretty clear to me, Luckett, that there is a lot of even initially before, we saw the jobs start to open up, but even before the jobs started opening up, there was stuff out there well, even if he doesn't take one this cycle, there's a lot of big jobs up there the next cycle that he could take for. They made it clear that he's going to be a hot commodity. His representatives are shopping him around quite a bit, and I think some of it is to make sure that the price is right, wherever it may be. But there was some stuff today about Sumrall for that vacancy at Purdue. I think the biggest one that I'm worried about is North Carolina, mostly because of just the nature of that job and how you can recruit there, the players you can get there. But nevertheless, his name's come up a lot in the last 24 hours. And so it feels like if you want to get that guy, that pressure's on.
Yeah, let's just talk what we know. Like it sounds, or what we think we know. Sounds like Sumrall, Glenn Schumann, the Georgia defensive coordinator, and Freddie Kitchens, the interim head coach there, are kind of the finalists. So, where that search goes, we'll see. His name was linked to Purdue, which I found interesting because I don't think he's going to take the Purdue job. I think Purdue's going to hire an offensive coach, but that his name popped up there, Pete Nakos reported today, was, I think, just intriguing. I think you've got to look at it two ways. Like, Sumrall could be doing all of this just to get a raise from Tulane.
Yeah.
Agent's job is to make him, agents want to make money. They make money by their clients getting paid more. And so you could drive up that price. There's obviously reasons for him to stay at Tulane. I think, Nick, I look at it this way. With the unknown landscape in college athletics, if you are John Sumrall, why would you go to the ACC? Specifically for a job that, I think it'd be different maybe for Clemson or Florida State, because you could say, oh, you can win a national championship there.
Mm-hmm.
But why would you go to a league that two members have tried to leave? There's all kinds of infighting. It feels like the league most likely to crumble in the next move, and there will be a next move.
There's always a next move.
You want what Luckett's gut says on this? This is smoke.
Ooh.
This is all smoke.
Ooh, all smoke. Oh.
I don't think it makes sense for him to go somewhere and risk perhaps getting stuck.
I'm with you. When we've seen this in the past with other coaches in a similar position too, right? Like Billy Napier waited around. He turned down a bunch of SEC jobs before.
That's where I'm at. I think that that's part of my thinking where it's at, because I think he's in the Napier Tom Herman mold. Top of the line, AAC head coach, who's clearly the top candidate, top G5 candidate, is winning big, can almost name his price in a negotiation, but it's also at a place that will pay him, and it's also at a place where he's probably going to have a great chance to win the league next year, and he can be picky. That's just where I'm at. So why would he go to North Carolina with no ties, and the ACC factor? North Carolina's going to be probably fine in realignment, but you just don't know, right? You just don't know, and that's just where I sit. That's just what my gut tells me.
Interesting. Well, I hope you had your what was that stuff? The Jamie Lee Curtis cut, the poop yogurt. You remember those commercials? She'd be like, "I stay regular because I eat my poop yogurt." You had your poop yogurt today to get your gut cleaned out?
But I had fried chicken for lunch, so that might just be the grease talking.
Dude, that sounds amazing. I've had how many cups of coffee we got today?
I did 3. Had 3 this morning.
I'm on 4, and it's wearing a little thin. We've had some players enter the portal, but not from Kentucky as of yet. There's screenshots going around of Jamoy Macklin. I'm not anticipating him back. There's a lot of guys, but no Kentucky guys have officially made announcements. You're seeing, I know Jacob interviewed a South Alabama kid that I think Kentucky's contacted, so that's out there.
A nickel, yeah.
You're seeing a few big names. It's usually like former 4-star recruit who hasn't played much enters the portal, and you kind of got to keep your head on a swivel and watch out for those. The biggest name so far, though, Miller Moss. I don't think Kentucky's going to be in the market for a tier A quarterback necessarily, but that was the one that made all of the headlines today.
Yeah. How much does Miller Moss make Hugh Freeze pay him? Is the question.
Well, and the other part too, when reading kind of Nakos's preview of just what some of the asking price is, there aren't a lot of obvious you got to pay this guy a bunch of money quarterbacks, but it actually helps those other guys because the quantity's so limited. Like Miller Moss, yeah, like he might be the only huge name guy out there. I know you had on the one thread that's somebody staff only of like potential big portal guys. The kid from Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Last year he's probably not tier A price, but this year he probably is tier A price. So
yeah, we just don't know. We don't know what the market's going to be yet. I mean, that's hard to say because you're a prisoner of the market. Like I point to last year at running back.
Mm-hmm.
For a long time, that running back market sucked in the portal.
Yeah.
It was
like injured Rocket Sanders.
Yeah, Rocket Sanders coming off injury, who's asking for big money because Damian Martinez didn't get in until later. ETN got in, but he was going to Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was another, and then Judkins was a late one too. So when you looked up, you were like, oh, wow, Judkins, Martinez, Rocket Sanders. That was a pretty good haul, but it wasn't like that at first. And I think Kentucky was like, okay, we've got to pick one and roll with them. And that's kind of what they did. But then I think they showed in the spring that they didn't feel great about the position. And then like what could go wrong went wrong at that position this year.
Yeah.
And so I think they're going to be in the running back market this year. So you got to hope, I think, that the market is better if you're Kentucky. I think getting a quarterback is something they probably have to do. So they've got to make a decision. Is it for a guy to come in to compete with Cutter Boley, or is it a guy to come in and maybe start for a year and then have Cutter take over in 26? So then you got to figure out how much money you're willing to spend. And I agree with you. I don't think they're going to be in the top tier, but they're going to be in that mid tier, or they're going to have to evaluate and maybe move quickly, kind of like Louisville did with Tyler Shuck. Just moved on him very, very quick, didn't pay a ton for him, and ended up working out really well for them. But again, a lot of this is going to come down to evals, like with them. It's not necessarily a money issue for me. A lot of it's evaluation. Like you in the portal, you got to make quick evals and they got to fit and you got to go and pull the trigger. And that's going to be, I think, a lot of this for Kentucky. But I do think that South Alabama guy, they're going after, name is escaping me at the top of my head. I think that makes sense. The Zion, Scruggs, Zion Childress replacement. He's a little bit undersized, but he's productive. Good tackler. Like I think that makes sense. That he could fill a role immediately for you, and you're going to need more guys like that. But it's one thing to target them; you got to be able to close on them as well.
There's going to be a lot of moving parts. We're going to keep our head on a swivel throughout the silly season. I tend to leave, as far as quarterback is concerned, I tend to lean that they'll get somebody to compete, quote unquote. Mostly just from a budgetary standpoint, because
but what is my question? What does compete mean? Is it competing that we hope he wins the job, or is it competing we need to compete? We need to compete and be a quality backup. Like what competing can mean two different things to me. So I'll be interested to see how that all plays out.
There's a lot going on, a lot happening, and I feel like I might have missed out on something in the last 50 minutes. You got that? You get that itch during this time of year where you're like, "Oh, I haven't been on Twitter. What's happened? Oh, I missed it." That's where we're at. But it's silly. We're along for the ride.
lot going on.
Well, we appreciate you joining us here today on 11 Personnel. We'll be back Wednesday night to talk about everything that happens on signing day. So make sure you're subscribed to the KSR YouTube channel. Whenever we go live, you'll get a notification and follow along with everything that's happening on KS Board. The silly season sale is going on right now. Just $1 to give us a try during this wild time of the year. It's just remember, we're just getting started, bro. I mean, there is a lot that's going to happen over the next 6 weeks. So just prepare accordingly, folks.
Lock in.
No need to overreact right away. Soup said there's no need to panic. Even if they're giving you some reasons to panic, a lot's going to change. A lot's going to happen. I think it's funny, too, with everybody talking about Macklin. It's mostly just because nobody's entered yet. How many receptions do you think Macklin had this year, Luckett, off the top of your head?
11.
13. You know, like, stuff happens. There's going to be a lot that happens in the coming days and weeks. The portal officially opens Sunday, correct?
Monday. Week from today.
So that's when we get official news. For now, it's just going to be, I intend to, but the real madness is still a week away. Signing day on Wednesday. How many players, let's predict now, how many players are in the signing class? We're down to 19.
I'd say 20.
Okay, I'm gonna go 18.
Nice round number.
I think they lose 2 more, gain 1 more. Yeah. Okay. All right, there you have it. Little predictions to send you off on your way. It's going to be a busy time. We appreciate you following on now. For Adam Luckett, I'm Nick Roush. Go Cats and go Crow Crew.